Hello, dear viewers. Welcome to the Eagle Discovery YouTube channel. Today, we present an analysis of the latest operations on the Ukrainian army front and the overall situation. If you want to stay informed about current events, we recommend watching the video until the end. 3 years of war, a costly miscalculation for Russia. Nearly 3 years have passed since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. What was initially expected to be a quick and decisive victory has turned into one of the most embarrassing chapters in modern Russian history. Instead of capturing Kiev in a matter of days, as many predicted, Putin's invasion has resulted in the loss of over 1 million lives, billions of dollars in military equipment, and a disastrous blow to Russia's global reputation. The war has also had profound geopolitical consequences. The Russian economy has faced severe sanctions, causing inflation and a decline in foreign investment. Many multinational corporations have withdrawn from Russia, further exacerbating economic struggles. Additionally, the once feared Russian military has been exposed for its logistical failures, outdated strategies, and internal corruption, leading to a loss of credibility among its allies and adversaries alike. Even more humiliating for Putin, Ukraine has seized hundreds of kilometers of Russian territory, including parts of the Kursk region, which Ukraine has controlled since August last year. Despite Putin's attempts to reclaim this lost ground, the results have been catastrophic. The Ukrainian military has employed advanced Western weaponry and superior tactical coordination to outmaneuver Russian forces, repeatedly forcing them into retreats. Reports indicate that Russian troops are suffering from low morale, supply shortages, and poor leadership, further compounding their inability to achieve strategic objectives. The Kursk Operation, a disaster for Russia. The Kursk Operation was meant to be a decisive Russian effort to reclaim lost territory and turn the tide of the war. However, it quickly turned into one of the most disastrous military campaigns in modern Russian history. Launched with over 50,000 troops, supported by tanks and artillery, the operation has resulted in massive losses, both in manpower and equipment. From the beginning, Russian forces faced logistical difficulties, poor coordination, and unexpectedly fierce Ukrainian resistance. The Ukrainian military, leveraging reconnaissance drones, precision artillery, and fortified defensive positions, effectively repelled Russian advances, leading to over 38,000 casualties in this operation alone. Furthermore, Ukrainian forces executed well-planned counterattacks, disrupting Russian supply lines and seizing strategic positions. Reports suggest that Russian troops suffered from severe shortages of ammunition and medical supplies, further weakening their ability to sustain the offensive. Morale among Russian soldiers declined significantly, with increasing cases of desertion and surrender. Despite attempts to reinforce their positions, Russian forces have failed to make meaningful territorial gains. The Kursk Operation has become a clear example of Russia's declining military effectiveness and Ukraine's growing resilience, further damaging Putin's strategic objectives in the war. Ukraine's tactical superiority and counteroffensive. Ukraine has launched a series of well-coordinated counterattacks, catching Russian forces off guard. With support from Western weaponry and technology, Ukraine has disrupted Russian supply lines and reclaimed territory. Key to their success is the ability to adapt quickly, utilizing drone reconnaissance, precision artillery, and mobile defense tactics. Advanced systems like HIMARS and long-range artillery have allowed Ukraine to target deep behind enemy lines, hitting ammunition depots and command centers. Ukraine's exceptional battlefield awareness and intelligence sharing with Western allies have enabled precise strikes, crippling Russia's operational capabilities. Small mobile units use hit-and-run tactics, ambushing Russian convoys and inflicting heavy casualties. The counteroffensive has also had a psychological impact, with reports of declining morale, desertions, and growing fear among Russian troops. The success of Ukraine's counteroffensives highlights that modern warfare requires more than sheer numbers. It depends on superior tactics, intelligence, and technological advantage. Lessons from history. The parallel to Finland's Winter War. Ukraine's resistance to Russia mirrors Finland's defense against the Soviet Union in 1939. Stalin, like Putin, underestimated a smaller, well-prepared opponent, thinking Finland would be easily conquered. However, Finland's use of guerrilla tactics, leveraging harsh winter conditions, and ambushing Soviet troops resulted in significant losses for the Soviets. Similarly, Ukraine has used precision strikes, drones, and mobile defense strategies to weaken Russian advances. The key lesson from the Winter War is that sheer numbers do not guarantee victory. Stalin's failure led to severe losses, much like Putin's miscalculation, which has resulted in significant setbacks for Russia. Both conflicts also reshaped geopolitics. Finland preserved its independence, while Ukraine's resistance has strengthened its identity and attracted more Western support, moving closer to NATO. The lesson is clear. Underestimating a determined, smaller opponent leads to prolonged conflict and strategic mistakes. Putin's war in Ukraine echoes Stalin's errors, proving that adaptability, determination, and tactical innovation can defeat even the most powerful forces. Ukraine's strategic objective: negotiating from a position of strength. Finland's goal in 1940 was not outright victory but survival. They made the war so costly for Stalin that he was forced to negotiate, securing Finland's sovereignty despite territorial concessions. Ukraine is attempting the same strategy against Russia, leveraging its military resilience and strategic counteroffensives to exhaust Russian forces and force Moscow to the negotiating table on Kyiv's terms. By capturing and holding Russian territory, Ukraine is creating leverage for future peace negotiations, just as Finland did. Holding key regions such as Kursk strengthens Ukraine's diplomatic standing and prevents Russia from dictating the terms of a potential settlement. Furthermore, Ukraine's ability to control Russian territory disrupts Moscow's logistical capabilities, weakens Russia's defensive lines, and shifts the psychological balance of the war, proving that Russian forces are not invincible. If Trump's administration presents a peace plan that conflicts with Kyiv's goals, Ukraine will need to maximize its bargaining power. Territorial gains are crucial in this regard, as they provide Ukraine with tangible assets that can be exchanged or used as leverage in diplomatic discussions. Additionally, continued Western support, including military aid and intelligence sharing, will be key in ensuring Ukraine maintains its battlefield momentum and secures favorable terms in any future negotiations. The Kursk Offensive, a game changer. On August 6, 2024, Ukraine launched a surprise attack on the Russian region of Kursk, catching Russian forces off guard. Around 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers, supported by tanks and armored vehicles, crossed the border with the goal of disrupting Russian defenses and seizing strategic positions. The attack quickly overwhelmed Russian forces, capturing villages, key checkpoints, and disrupting supply chains, leaving Russian troops in disarray. The offensive showcased Ukraine's operational precision, using mobility, intelligence, and Western-supplied weapons to dominate the battlefield. Drone reconnaissance enabled precise targeting of Russian positions, crippling their defenses. The speed and effectiveness of the assault had a major psychological impact, causing entire Russian units to retreat in chaos. Ukraine's success in Kursk challenged Russia's regional dominance, disrupting supply lines and exposing logistical weaknesses. The attack sparked international discussions about Ukraine's ability to reclaim lost ground and even push further into Russian-held territory, though some analysts warned it could escalate the conflict. Ultimately, the Kursk Offensive was a turning point, proving Ukraine's capacity to not just defend, but actively shape the battlefield. It strengthened Ukraine's position on the global stage and set the stage for future military strategies and negotiations. Russia's response and the deployment of North Korean troops. As Russia struggled to hold Kursk, reports surfaced that North Korean troops were deployed to bolster Russian defenses. This alliance, secured during a high-level visit by Putin to North Korea, involved Pyongyang sending troops in exchange for military technology and resources. However, these troops have faced significant challenges. including language barriers, poor training, and physical weaknesses due to malnutrition. The deployment underscores Russia's growing manpower shortages, as it has increasingly relied on foreign mercenaries, prisoner recruits, and now North Korean forces to sustain its military efforts. While North Korea's military may appear strong on paper, many of its troops lack combat experience and modern equipment, making them vulnerable in high-intensity warfare. Logistical coordination between Russian and North Korean forces has been problematic, with differences in tactics, command structures, and communication issues. Many North Korean units have struggled to integrate into Russian operations, further complicating Russia's already precarious situation. The use of North Korean soldiers has drawn international condemnation, with Western nations warning of new sanctions and increased pressure on Pyongyang for supporting Russia's war. As the battle for Kursk continues, it remains unclear whether these reinforcements will help Russia or become another liability in its faltering war strategy. The bloody Kursk battlefield, a war of attrition. Kursk has become one of the deadliest fronts of the war, with Russia's progress slow and costly. While they've cleared areas south of Kokovo, captured part of the city center, and seized a key bridge over the Kokovo Reservoir, Ukrainian forces still control significant portions, and full Russian control remains elusive. The battle has turned into a war of attrition, with both sides suffering heavy losses. Russian commanders have used frontal assaults to break Ukrainian defenses, but these have led to staggering casualties. Additionally, Russian units face severe shortages of ammunition and medical supplies, hindering their efforts. Ukraine, on the other hand, has effectively used defensive fortifications, precision artillery, and drones to hold its ground. They've targeted Russian supply lines and command centers, weakening Russian reinforcements. Snipers and special forces have also added to the psychological toll on Russian troops. The high casualty rates and lack of progress in Kursk have sparked unrest in Russia. Military bloggers and nationalist groups have criticized the Kremlin, and Russian soldiers have expressed frustration over poor leadership and unclear objectives. Despite Moscow's determination, Kursk has come to symbolize Russia's declining military strength, with Ukrainian forces continuing to resist and counterattack. The cycle of Russian mistakes and Ukraine's defensive mastery. Ukraine anticipated Russia's tactics and turned Kursk into a formidable defense. Recognizing Russia's reliance on overwhelming force, Ukraine created multi-layered fortifications with trenches, minefields, and fortified villages. Using drones and satellite imagery, Ukraine tracked Russian movements and executed well-timed counterattacks that disrupted supply lines. The key strategy was defense in depth, interconnected positions that delayed Russian advances. If one line was breached, Ukraine would retreat to the next, causing attrition and forcing Russia to fight for every inch. Highly mobile Ukrainian units also executed hit-and-run tactics, striking deep behind enemy lines and forcing Russian forces into vulnerable positions. Despite heavy casualties, Russia persisted, but struggled with poorly trained reinforcements, including North Korean troops, who were ill-prepared for modern warfare. Conscription of inexperienced soldiers and leadership issues led to growing disillusionment, desertions, and weakening morale. As Russia faced repeated failures and mounting losses, Ukraine's resilient defenses turned Kursk into a symbol of prolonged attrition rather than a quick victory for Russia. Putin's desperation and the future of the war. Putin has doubled down on flawed strategies, relying on overwhelming force and poorly trained troops, including North Korean soldiers and conscripts. By late 2024, Russia's military is increasingly stretched and demoralized, especially in Kursk, where attrition and failed offensives are costing Russia heavily. Putin's obsession with territorial gains has weakened Russia's military and global standing, with allies like China and Iran questioning the sustainability of the war. Domestically, dissent is growing, and the economy is in decline due to sanctions and inflation, fueling public discontent. Putin's failure to break Ukraine's resistance mirrors Stalin's Winter War, with Russia facing humiliation and military collapse. If the war drags on, Russia may be forced to seek a negotiated settlement. Ukraine's defense, bolstered by Western support, shows that resilience and strategy can defeat even the most powerful aggressors. As the war enters its third year, it has already reshaped global politics, military strategies, and perceptions of power. Yet, the conflict is far from over, and the stakes couldn't be higher. One thing is clear: Ukraine has achieved what many thought was impossible. Thank you for watching. See you in our next videos.